well-being, and welcome back to the channel. I'm sorry everything's been very quiet recently, but I've been getting my head in gear and deciding on some real direction for this. I wanted to bring you something that is really close to my heart, something I've struggled with a little bit, and something that's just bizarrely interesting, to be honest with you. So before we get into all that, if you could pop down below and hit that big red subscribe button, that would be wonderful, and I'll get right into it. So this new series will be called Psychedelics, God and Mental Illness. Yeah, we're diving right into the deep end, and I know that's a bit of a crazy one, but it's something that has kind of outlined my entire life, and we'll get through that in a sec. So first we need to look at why people want to have a psychedelic experience, what it really means for them, and for their identity as well. We need to look at where it all comes from and how it can help and hinder the psyche. So first of all, reasons why people want to have a psychedelic experience are as a replacement for faith, some sort of a safety net. I know that was definitely something for myself. I really wanted to find faith or have a religious experience, but felt kind of disheartened by the general practices of Orthodox faith. It was something that I found really difficult to incorporate myself into, and it also just left a big blank hole of understanding. Now, how can I ever understand this with such a feeble mind that's just caught up in the superficialities of... That is a big commonality between people that want to have these psychedelic experiences for an enlightening purpose. So it's kind of a safety net. It's also people looking to fast track a religious experience, which I didn't realise I was actually doing until I went to go and see one of my friends who's very kind of in touch with that kind of, and they used to be involved in an evangelist church. So looking at faith from different perspectives as well is something that I had never really done before with another person. It had always been a very solo experience. I know the path to enlightenment should be something that is almost like a hermit stage of your life while you're trying to understand your identity and how that fits in with the identity of greater reality. However, it can also be really unhelpful when it comes to your mental health, building relationships that are stable and solid in the reality that we have right now. Because without this physical reality, you wouldn't have the possibility to be able to explore the metaphysical, even if the metaphysical is a thing. You know that right now for certain you have this solid frame of identity, and with the people around you and the community that you have, it can be really hindering to your mental health for you to remove yourself from that kind of situation just to be able to experience something that is otherworldly or ethereal in a way. So your mind is completely malleable with all the preconceptions of what an experience may be. Obviously we see all of it online, you know, there's all these worst trip stories ever, things like that, and your mind can be really malleable even before you have a psychedelic experience to what that psychedelic experience may be. So having an understanding of yourself, having an understanding of your identity, and having some sort of safe place and safety net is something that is really important. Now, I just want to make clear right now that I'm not advocating anybody go out and have themselves a psychedelic experience, take any psychedelic or hallucinogenic substances at all. This is just a talk about my experiences of them and how it's really kind of shaped my life in a good way and in a bad way as well. Yeah, wanting to explore the non-physical for me maybe made reality less entertaining, and it got me into a cycle of constantly wanting to explore something that may not be there. Led to a lot of different delusions, and also paired with the mental health conditions that I already have. It wasn't very helpful with grounding myself in reality and helping me to understand the things that I had to do to be able to progress as an individual within society as well. That's something that you feel massively apart from on psychedelics or in a psychedelic experience, which is meant to be the exact opposite of the use of the substance. However, there's a very us and them mentality, which is really not helpful for grounding. So you want to explore the non-physical, and you can craft a much more elaborate reality in it where you are like an ultimate protagonist. You have all of this this grandeur that other people don't seem to understand. But the reality of it is that they do. I think everybody has this kind of deep, innate understanding of, the laws of morality, how we act within a certain circumstance or act to one another. And deep down, we all kind of believe fairly similar things. Obviously, there's going to be different differences depending on your political agenda or culture and all of those kind of things. But deep down, there is a common basis of, I'll not do bad to you if you do bad to me. And that is amplified on these psychedelic substances to make you feel almost kind of removed from that and removed from that part of society. They're enhancing our most primitive selves. It's a very introspective experience, and that's also what faith is as well. That's how it reflects faith so honestly and easily, because they're both very introspective experiences about what we think, and what we think as rhetoric, not what we think tautologically or what we think through reason. This is just purely what we think from our own rhetoric, and that may be something that's innate, that could be something that's from our environment and echo chambers, but it's always just things that we feel. It's a very faith-based experience, let's go with. So next, I just want to talk a little bit about how it works and that kind of stuff. So here we go. Psychedelics overstimulate serotonin receptors, that's a word. Psychedelics overstimulate serotonin receptors in the brain structure, opening up our imagination to surreal states beyond the normal. We can see things in a more abstract view. I once thought while I was on acid that a paintbrush was being sarcastic to me. Now that is quite a surreal thing to think. You're personifying all of these objects, and that's another thing about psychedelic experiences. Everything has a certain sense of personification to it, and that can be very, very good, very helpful, very grounding, but it can also be extremely harmful in terms of delusions or experiences where you really want to be alone but you don't feel necessarily alone. So certain memory processes are offline, the default network mode. This is the self-critical talk to the ego. It's always quieted, and networks don't always communicate to each other, start making neural pathways throughout this. So this is why it's used primarily now in scientific research for things like mental health. Now, I don't want to go out and advocate that anybody go and start taking these substances for their mental health without the proper experience, guidance, and medical knowledge about it as well. It's something that I've done myself personally, and it made things a lot worse. Now, psychedelic experiences for mental health are proven to be potentially helpful for the brain, for creating these new neural pathways and for exploring new paths of thought, especially without the self-talk to the ego. So especially without, in depression, where you have a detrimental state of mind to your own ego, and these things are very self-critical, self-deprecating, it can release a lot of that attention. However, it can also release a lot of bad memories. It can also release a lot of feelings that you're not ready to actually confront and tackle. And if you don't do this in a way that you feel comfortable with experienced people and medical knowledge, it can lead to experiences that definitely hinder the mental health of the patient. So throughout that, I just wanted to explain here that they might be the start of a personal inquiry about yourself. They might be a start of understanding a journey, how to release tension, get over bad circumstances, because I've also had experiences where they do really help to release tension, stop thinking about things that ultimately on a wider scale, on a more metaphysical scale, don't naturally matter. And that can be very extremely comforting, the idea that some of these problems can be insignificant if you make them insignificant. But it's not the totality of spirituality. It's not some sort of mad journey to go and meet the ultimate. It's something about your personal experience that can be a start of that journey to understand how you feel and how you fit into spirituality. However, it cannot be used as a fast track. And that is something that really hit me very, very, very hard. So next up, it's greater reality and how we fit into that. Is it a thing? Is it not a thing? And what we do with our physicality right now. What we do, that was good. Next move, we open up this concept of greater reality to a larger scale. It can be perceived by these psychedelics, but we can't really relate that to the physical world without thinking about it again in a sober state of mind. So with a change in perspective that's so drastic, it can remove us from the physical world with improper use, and also remove us from the physical world even years after that use has been. I mean, I personally suffer with things like delusions and psychoses, and I know that is part of the condition that I already have. However, these things have definitely been emphasized by the use of psychedelics in an improper manner. So if we open up this concept, it's always to be in a safe environment with a person that you trust or a sober guide. Having a sober guide is something that is really important as well, especially in the first couple of times that you have a psychedelic experience, because it brings you back to that actual physical grounding, the reality that we have right now, and the importance of your actions within that physical reality, even when you are questioning the metaphysical. So always stay safe. You shouldn't use it as a constant, get involved in it where it's something that becomes a habit. Just like everything else, obviously, if you use it to excess, then it has massive effects on your body and your mind. And finally, just my thoughts on the whole matter for you, just in case you might need them. Now, side note, there must be a physical world to interpret. All of this brings me back to the idea that has been talked about by many philosophers, even physicists and neuroscientists, that the idea that the world itself might be a hallucination, it might be some sort of shared hallucination, and that the physical reality that we live in may not be exactly what we think it is, or not there at all. We can see this kind of now even by neuroscientists like Anil Seth at Sussex University, who is teaching about the idea of controlled reality as a complete hallucination of the self and of the environment. Now, that is an extremely interesting idea, and I do agree to it on a certain extent, that most of this is developed by our perception of it, for sure. But there must be a physical reality to interpret. Is if one's detached from it temporarily, if we can remove ourselves from this physical plane temporarily and enjoy things in the metaphysical with that kind of abstract thought pattern and then return to it, then there must be a physical world itself to interpret, to have the environment to craft all of these almost delusions of the brain. These things must actually exist. So constants remain, such as objects, spaces, and concepts, and they must exist. If we appear to perceive these things differently, it doesn't matter, they're still there. So when one denies the existence of physical reality for spirituality, or for no reality whatsoever, some sort of simulation theory, then they can feel very disconnected from the world at large. And the world at large is ultimately one big organic function that works in symbiosis, and the idea of serendipity. If we remove ourselves from that symbiosis and from that serendipity, then how could we possibly feel connected to it at large? It always brings us back round to this big circle idea that there is a physical reality. There may be a metaphysical reality. That's something obviously that has been hinted through theologians, scholars, philosophers, even physicists for years now. However, the physical reality at this point in time is still the most important one. Even if we are to take into account different religions, like the idea that this whole plane of reality is a complete illusion, then the actions that we do here still matter. It's still ultimately real. So I know that got a little bit intense, but thank you so much for staying until the end. I really, really appreciate it. I'm really hoping that this is where I want to stick with the idea of this channel. It's a little bit more authentic, a little bit more true to myself, and also it's just something I'm really, really, really interested in. So if you could pop down below, type me a little comment and let me know what you think. And if you have any questions that you'd like to add into the next video as well, I'd really be happy to go over all of them with you there. I just want to say that I'm really, really happy this channel has found some direction, and I'm really happy to share it with all of you. So thank you very much, and I'll see you very shortly. Bye!